Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here on a Sunday morning. This is a very important topic to talk today, especially with the artists, because we are kind of at crossroads again. We were at crossroads a while back with the Industrial Revolution, but that revolution kind of gave us more time, more leisure time to get creative. And now we are at what we like to think of as an intelligence revolution. And that actually puts the future of human creativity in question instead of giving us more leisure to do the same as Industrial Revolution did. And we have so many questions as artists, as lay people, we have so many questions and the answers are not so clear. Maybe they'll never get clear till things actually open up more, but that is why we are having these webinars from Artsee to try and see if we can chip away at these questions one by one and get more enlightened about this revolution that we are going through. And today we are very lucky to have an amazing audience. The participants, thank you so much for coming, and a diverse panel of experts who are here to share with us their knowledge and experience with AI. Let me start with some intros. Our special speaker today is Alicia Abella. Dr. Alicia is a senior executive with a vast portfolio in AI systems and telecommunications. She is currently the Global Practice Director for AI ML at Google Cloud, overseeing sales strategy and collaboration with cross-functional teams. She has been at AT&T Bell Labs for 25 years, published papers, secured patents, and contributed to groundbreaking technologies. Her accolades include recognition from President Obama and induction into the Women in Technology Hall of Fame. Welcome, Alicia. And on our artist panel here, we have, in no particular order, Alex Tichane is a composer, producer, and engineer. Upon finishing an MFA from music composition from SUNY Purchase, he went on to work in TV, film, and live events. He was a member of the creative team that produced Eisner-nominated graphic novel Big Black, Dan Attica. And he is currently the executive producer for the short film The Word is Love, which is presently in post-production. Chris Fiore, filmmaker, known as a pioneer of cyberpunk. Fiore's early work fused deconstructive impulses with Brooklyn's synthetic turn. Backstage, his 2000 documentary on Jay-Z's tour gained commercial success. His documentary Good Woman, capturing Occupy Wall Street, won the Jury Award for Best Documentary in 2016. He has exhibited internationally, and his current work, Broadway and Swan, chronicles the National Audubon Society's Audubon Mural Project. Thank you for being here, Chris.
Pleasure, thank you.
We have Manoj Kumar from India, Mumbai. He's a virologist, as well as a fine artist, a really fine artist. He loves to draw and paint landscapes and figurative subjects. Watercolor is his favorite medium. He believes that fine art can be a powerful medium for one's spiritual growth, and AI can be utilized as a fantastic tool to facilitate it. Thank you for coming, Manoj. Looking forward. Joel Thome, everybody knows Joel. A Grammy Award recipient and Pulitzer Prize nominee, Joel is an internationally acclaimed composer of classical and contemporary orchestral music. He's also a renowned conductor of opera and other music theater works. In '94, Thome's polygram verve recording of Zappa's Universe received a Grammy Award for Best Rock Instrumental.
Wow.
And he is a very techie person. So we look forward to hearing from you. Juan is right now in Madrid, but he was in Brooklyn a few months back. He began his career as a composer at the age of 16. As a singer-songwriter, he has written the score for several plays for the national theaters of Argentina and Spain, and composed, arranged, produced, and performed for the biggest names in Argentine popular music, as well as coaching recording artists for major record labels such as Sony Music, Polygram, and EMI. He's also an educationist. He's worked with kids in Brooklyn. Deborah is a harness, composer, singer, songwriter, narrator, conductor, and educator, residing in Teaneck, New Jersey. She's the founder of Turn On the Music. Deborah developed her vision and mission to create futuristic chamber music ensemble with core instrumentation of horn, violin, electric guitar, and electric bass, expanding the aesthetic of contemporary improvisation using a hint of jazz, rock, and 20th century influences. This is so exciting, Deborah. Thank you for being here. And last but not the least, Ramesh Nagarajan. Ramesh bridges the worlds of technology and artistry. By day, he's a cloud technology expert helping businesses navigate the digital landscape. By night and sometimes by day, he's an aspiring poet, singer, and guitarist, and has been rumored to have once stopped time itself. Lately, he's been experimenting with AI as a muse for his poetry, blurring the lines between human and machine creativity. So hearty welcome to you all, our participants. Your questions and comments are very important to us. And please use the Q&A, ask any question, and also post your comment, which we will address time to time. So we'd like to start off today with Alicia.
Well, thank you so much, Padmaja, and thank you to the Artsee community for having me here today. It's a true honor. I was very taken by the topic when Padmaja brought it up to me, and it really caused me to pause and think about the topic and technology and the intersection of technology and arts. And so I've prepared a few slides for you to kind of walk you through some of my musings on art and AI, and think of it as something to really more provoke and promote an exploratory conversation, discussion. I think I'm not drawing any conclusions per se, but I will cover what I think AI is, what art is, how we define certain aspects of AI, give some examples of how AI is being used today, what benefits we are already reaping from AI, and add in a little bit perhaps of humor and some thought-provoking. All right, so art and AI, a philosophical musing on creation and imitation. And the picture that you see on the bottom of my title slide was generated by Google's Imagen program, which is a program that takes text, which is displayed here on the left, and generates an image. In this case, an art gallery displaying Monet paintings. The art gallery is flooded, as you can see, and robots are going around the art gallery using paddleboards. So at this point, I thought it would be important to define intelligence, since we're talking about artificial intelligence, or at least try to approach it. And so I thought I'd approach it by using this Venn diagram. And you can see each circle of the Venn diagram representing human intelligence on one side, artificial on the other. And I've depicted, in fact, an intersection of the two, because in fact, I think we have reached a point where we are using AI to perform tasks that humans can also perform. But there's certainly plenty outside of that intersection that humans do, and others that artificial intelligence can do. And then there might even be others outside of that. So today, we've been using AI, and have been actually for some time, to do things like generate emails, summarize large texts, translate one language into another. In fact, I use Google's translation capabilities to quite often translate text from English to Portuguese, for example, when I'm composing emails to my clients in Brazil. I find that to be a very useful tool. And there are many similar types of capabilities that artificial intelligence has enabled us to do. And then there is also where I put certain tasks squarely inside artificial intelligence. And one of those is chess playing. I'm sure you've all know about the AI that beat the grand chess player, Kasparov, in 1997. And that was IBM's Deep Blue expert system that beat the grand chess master. I think the computer beat 2 games and then drew 3, and that was in 1997. Now, despite the expert system beating the chess player, it did so in a way that was not the way that a human would play chess. And in fact, I think that's how it's been described by chess players, that the moves that an AI creates and decides, and despite them being a winning play, are not the kinds of plays that a human would make. So in essence, the AI is thinking differently from a human when it comes to playing chess. Then there is cat intelligence, or other kinds of intelligence. I would say a cat is intelligent. I have one roaming around my house, and he's quite intelligent. He has a good geometric sense of his space. He's a great hunter. We have probably a lot in common with the cat, but we also may have something that's not in common with the cat. They may have an intelligence we are not aware of. It's hard enough for us to define human intelligence, let alone trying to understand a cat intelligence. And then I have this painting, the surrealistic painting from Dali. I have that squarely on the human side of the diagram. Dali first introduced this innovative way of painting, the perseverance of memory. And I think while today's AI can generate an image in the style of Dali, I don't believe an AI would have come up with Dali's painting to begin with. It is truly a creative masterpiece that I have put in the human side of the diagram. And then, of course, as we travel the stars and go outside our galaxies, we may encounter other types of intelligence that we will not be familiar with either. So I think what I wanted to say with this slide was really it's difficult to define what is intelligence, what is human intelligence. In fact, I asked Google's Gemini, which is Google's chatbot capability, kind of like ChatGPT, it's called Gemini, to define for me what is AI. And it gave me a great description of AI, very accurate, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. It wasn't at a level of depth that I was looking for. I also asked it, what is human intelligence? To which it concluded that it is a very complex topic. So from that, I thought I'd move into defining a few things for you about AI, just to kind of ground the conversation. What is AI? At its highest level, AI is used for data analytics, predictions, forecasting, object categorization, natural language processing, recommendations, intelligent data retrieval, and more. Doesn't sound too scary or too mystified, even though we have mystified AI, I think. And part of that is probably to do with the fact that we named it artificial intelligence. I think if we had come up with a name that was more descriptive of what AI in fact is, perhaps like statistical pattern matching instead of artificial intelligence, it may not have gotten all the media hype that it has had, or the frenzy and fear that it has evoked. But nevertheless, it is very good at many different tasks. It can do computations very, very quickly. It can process a lot of data in ways that we as humans cannot, and can be used in ways to help augment humans' capabilities. The term artificial intelligence was first coined in 1955 by a computer science pioneer. His name was John McCarthy, and 1955. So just think about that, right? We think that AI just came up onto the mainstream, but there's been decades and decades of work already done in AI. And he was also the creator of a programming language called Lisp. And this was, in fact, the programming language I first used to create my very first spoken dialogue system, which was a software system to have natural human-machine interactions back in 1996. So 40 years after the computer language was created, I was using it still to program human-machine interactions. So it's been around for quite some time. AI also encompasses many different disciplines, including computer science, data analytics and statistics, hardware and software engineering, linguistics, neuroscience, and even philosophy and psychology. When I was doing my PhD, I did a lot of reading on linguistics. My PhD is in computer science, in artificial intelligence, kind of this intersection between natural language processing and image processing. And my title of my PhD was From Imagery to Salience, Generating Locative Expressions in Context. What all that just means was that I had developed a software system that could use image processing to locate objects in X-rays and automatically generate pathology reports that described what those objects were in those images. In this case, they were X-rays of kidneys, and I was generating pathology reports that could identify kidney stones and other calcific densities. And as part of my PhD and being able to qualify for it, I also had to show that my software system could generate a pathology report that was similar or indistinguishable from that of a human. And so, in fact, I did enlist many radiologists to look at those pathology reports, and many of them thought they were actually generated by radiologists and not a machine. And this was in 1995. So I'm kind of dating these things so that, kind of give a perspective and a sense of how this area has matured and grown over the decades. So how does AI work? While the specifics vary across different AI techniques, the core principle revolves around data. AI systems learn and improve through the exposure of vast amounts of data, identifying patterns and relationships. They need lots of data. When I joined AT&T Bell Labs, I joined a research division that was doing research work on speech recognition, automatic speech recognition. And I joined a team that would ultimately go on to deploy the first ever spoken dialogue system in a telecommunications network. And it was intended to have human-machine conversations with customers of AT&T's that would call the call centers with questions about their bill. Now, we ended up developing this software system, handled millions of calls a month. But in order to get to that point, we had to train a lot of data. We used a technique that today would be called supervised learning, where we actually had a lab full of people listening to conversations between the human and the machine, transcribing it, and then manually labeling those transcriptions and saying, okay, this particular sentence is about a question about their bill, or this particular question relates to a technical problem the customer is having. And it's those labels associated with those sentences that then form the input to those models that were used to train the AI, so that the next time it saw a similar kind of sentence from a customer calling in, it would know what that person was calling about, and associate a particular confidence score to it. And if the confidence score was too low, then that would engage a dialogue between the machine and the human to try and get that confidence up so that it knew what the caller was calling about. But at the end of the day, a lot of that revolved around data. And it still does. So what are some of the benefits of AI? Well, I think I alluded to some of that already. AI can eliminate repetitive tasks, eliminate manual errors in data processing, process and analyze more information more quickly than a human. And that's a good thing for many aspects of research and development. We can imagine now using AI to be able to advance and develop and discover new pharmaceutical treatments, analyze data from a telecommunications network to better design the network, be able to ensure that there's good connectivity across the network. It can be used by doctors to help analyze and arrive at diagnoses better, because it can take a lot of data into account in a way that a human cannot. Lots of benefits that we're seeing from it. At Google, we talk to a lot of clients in many different industries. even retail customers are using it to help create product definitions and descriptions on their websites, generate marketing campaigns automatically because they can generate text from a prompt. So in the context of AI, especially recently, as of last year, when ChatGPT came on the scene, and the term a large language model you may have come across. So I wanted to define what that is. And essentially, it's a computer program that is trained on large quantities of data, used to answer questions, to write, to summarize, to elaborate or translate text, generate images, generate code even, and more. So that in its essence is what gets trained on that large quantity of data that I mentioned is needed to be able to have an AI do things we want it to do. And then there is the prompt. And the prompt is a set of instructions you give to the large language model to tell it what to do. You remember my title slide on the left-hand side, that was the prompt that was given to the AI in order to generate the image of the robots paddling through the flooded gallery. So a prompt is, and the whole notion of prompt engineering has become a new topic as well, because depending on how you phrase the prompt, you will get a better result in the end. So I decided to ask our Google's AI, Gemini, to write a limerick. And I asked, my prompt to it was, write a limerick about a dog who loves to chase cats. And this is all for the poets out there. And this is what Gemini responded. A terrier named Rex, quite the dasher, would spot whiskers and bolt in a flasher. Across lawns he'd tear with a frantic yip here, but the cat climbed a tree with a laugh, sir. So I would look at that and say, that's good. It's a limerick, right? 5 lines, has the structure of a limerick, and it describes a dog who loves to chase cats. Now that prompted, no pun intended, a thought back to a description by a literary critic of a poem that Emily Dickinson wrote. It's her poem number 761, and I will show you Emily Dickinson's poem. From blank to blank, a threadless way, I push mechanic feet to stop or perish or advance, alike indifferent. If end I gained, it ends beyond, indefinite disclosed. I shut my eyes and groped as well. 'Twas lighter to be blind. And this was the literary critic Harry Bloom's reaction to that poem. To pack this much into 41 words and 10 lines ought not to be possible. I put that out there because it kind of reflects the fact that these 10 lines were packed with meaning. We don't know what inspired Emily, what was her muse, but we know that she was taking in a lot of context, her own experiences, her own thoughts, her own brilliance, to be able to generate a response such as Harold Bloom's to her poem. I didn't quite get that same impression when I read the limerick from Gemini. So at this point, I wanted to just showcase a few examples of what AI can do today, and start where you all have probably heard the most about, which is really what came out last year, which I'm referring to as text to X. Right? You can now type a prompt, which you now know what it is, to create just about anything. So for example, you can type text to generate an image. And here is an image of vibrant California poppies that was automatically generated by a company called Midjourney. I have here on the left some products and services and models that Google has, and some external ones as well. There are many models now out there on the market. open source ones that companies have developed. Developers are able to create models as well, especially for specific tasks and specific domains. Google has Gemini, which is a large language model for sort of general question and answering. But in certain domains, like I mentioned, healthcare, you would want to create a model that is specific for that domain, because there are nuances and language related to that domain that you need to train the AI with. Because remember, the AI's fuel is data. So this is an example where we could use AI to go from text to video. So in this case, this is OpenAI's Sora, and it created a video from a prompt that it was about, generate me a short video of waves crashing onto the cliffs. And this is what you get. Google also has a product like this called Lumiere, which can also create short videos as well. Then there's even text to audio. For my composers out there, let's just say it's not quite to the level of a human, but you can give it text and get a song, most like any vocals at the moment. If you're interested in playing around with Google's version, there is one called Music LM and Music FM, which we recently put out there for experimentation. I think during Padmaja's introduction, she mentioned that one of the panelists looks to AI as a tool. I think I've seen some musicians who have been interviewed, who have used Google's Music FM, who have said that they're using this really as a tool to help them, kind of inspire them, to get them started. I've heard people quoted to say that they no longer fear the blank canvas, because they could start with something that might kind of inspire them and unleash their creativity. So that's kind of 2023. If we look at what's been going on this year, all of it really has been about what's called multimodality, or X to X. I talked about text to X. There's also X to X, where now you can feed these models not just text as input, but also images, videos, drawings, to be able to then generate other images or videos from those multimodalities. As an example, I have here an image that you can give an AI plus text. So this is a picture. The text is a watercolor painting, and the AI will produce a watercolor version of that image on the left. So at this point, as I close in towards the end here, I did want to take us into the future a bit. I want to take you all into the 24th century. And I am a big Star Trek fan. I don't know how many people out there of the attendees are also Star Trek fans, but for those of you who aren't, it's a sci-fi series that started in the 1960s, and it still continues today, and it's had many different series along the way. My favorite of which is the series called Star Trek: A Next Generation. And one of its main characters and one of its officers of the fleet is an android, and his name is Data, which is like truly a great word for him. So he's a unique android in the universe who knows he's a machine, but wants to be human. Brilliant premise, I thought. Data also is self-aware and has the ability to learn, but he was programmed with no emotions. So Data, one of my favorite characters. I want to play a clip, hopefully it'll come through on Zoom, about Data when he was in a phase of painting. So Data wants to be human. He wanted to understand humanity, and to do so, he wanted to learn that for which he felt was uniquely human: painting, writing, music. He played the violin, and so this clip shows him in his phase of painting to try and get close to being a human. Oh, and he also had a pet, because he noticed that humans like to have pets. So he tried to have a pet as well to figure out, well, what is it about being human that humans like pets? But that's something different. So here's the video. All right. Oh. All right. So I just wanted to show you that because it kind of illustrates, despite Data's wanting to be human and exploring and being able to paint, he wasn't producing something that certainly we as humans would maybe call creative or inspirational or art, at least not at the moment. I'm sure he was using data, no pun intended, that was used to program him to generate those paintings. But was it genuinely new and innovative is the question. I would say at this point, I would ask the following question. Would an AI call this art when Picasso first introduced it to the world in 1907, assuming there was AI back in 1907? I would think not, only because it was a brand new form of art, Cubism, something so unlike anything that had been done before, that how could the AI be able to identify something it had never seen before? It can see and respond to that of which is in its training data and in its models. Now, would an AI call this art today? Most definitely yes, because it would have been trained on this data. Just like it can create a painting or an image in the style of Van Gogh or of Rembrandt, because it has been shown images of Rembrandt and Van Gogh. But when they, as artists, first introduced that into the world, it was unique. And for many cases, and many of these artists at the time, people would not have called it art either. It was only maybe after some time that did happen, like Van Gogh's Tree Roots, or Surrealism by Salvador Dali, or Filippo Brunelleschi, who created for the very first time in the 1400s linear perspective in paintings. Prior to that, there was no linear perspective in paintings, but he introduced that innovation. Or Alberto Giacometti, who created this combination of Cubism and Surrealism in his sculptures. These were firsts that had not been seen before. Similarly, in literary art, with William Shakespeare inventing self-overhearing and William Faulkner's stream of consciousness that let us hear what characters were thinking, or Michele de Montaigne, who invented essays, or Miguel de Cervantes, who brought to us the first novel, Don Quixote. So with this, I leave you with the last slide before I hand it back to Padmaja. This was, again, a prompt that was given to Google's Imagen program, a bucket bag made of blue suede. The bag is decorated with intricate golden paisley patterns. The handle of the bag is made of rubies and pearls. And that image pretty much matches that prompt. It looks beautiful. I'm going to show you a few more examples of that and let you look at what the program can generate with the given prompts. So on the left is the prompt. On the right will be the image it creates with that prompt. And as I was looking at this, as I was preparing this presentation and looking at all the wonderful images that Imogen could create from the prompts, it dawned on me, well, what is the most creative thing I'm looking at here? What is truly creative here? And it's not the image, it's the prompt. And the prompt is what the human has created and thought up to create in order to then generate the image. So with that, I conclude my remarks for today, and I will pass it back to Padmaja to open it up then to the rest of the panelists for their commentaries.
Thank you so much, Alicia. That was a really in-depth and yet succinct summarization of AI. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Amazing.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask Chris, our filmmaker. I know he has some experience using Midjourney and some other stuff. What are your thoughts on using technology? What are your experiences using the AI technology and where this is headed?
Well, I haven't done a lot of used a lot of AI in my film work yet, simply because I'm in the thick of a project that doesn't really call for it at this point. Actually, no, that's absolutely wrong. I had used a ton of AI-generated images from Midjourney to create historical images and portraits of people that we were talking about, in this case, John James Audubon. And as the project went on, I felt less and less confident in those images. And I ended up basically eliminating all the AI images from the documentary, because documentary is its own kind of field, and it's supposed to represent an aspect of reality or life. And I really felt that even though I had named labeled everything generated by AI, I didn't really feel good about using those images. In this case, you know, it was just fake historical images that really looked like actual historical images that I had seen on, open source photo boards of women from the 20s wearing hats. And we were talking about how trumpeter swans had been hunted to almost extinction because of these fashion choices. So those are all basically gone right now. And, that's still an open question as to the use of AI in documentary and creating documentaries. I was all for it at the beginning, and as time went on, I felt less and less secure in that. Also, I've been using AI in my artwork a lot, generating images, mostly with Midjourney. And I was never, except for the very rare image, I never felt that the image that was created by the AI was sort of had any real depth or intrinsic meaning by itself. So what I started doing is treating it like a magazine or a piece of clip art. And now what I do is I have a whole pile of stuff that I work from, and I'll treat it very traditionally. As a tool, I guess as a tool, but also as a generator, and composite these different images together to create a different whole that to me feels more like art, or that feels like the art that I've been making in the past. So I'm quite satisfied with that for the moment, but I'm also thinking about future projects and how I can sort of escape from the purely imagistic approach to working with AI. And that's pretty much where I am at the point. Like I said, once I finish this traditional documentary project, I will have a lot more time and brain power to address these other questions, like, you know, the ethics of the training, the ethics of, you know, using it as pretending it's something it's not, like when like what I was doing with the images in the documentary. So that's, yeah, that's pretty much where I am now, and I'm very much looking forward to doing a lot more with it in the future.
Great. Thank you, Chris. That's very insightful. Alex, you also like produce films. Your thoughts on the same?
Yeah, for me, what I wanted to talk about today was some of the different hats that I wear and how AI ends up working its way into different things that I'm doing. So as an engineer and primarily as an audio engineer, there are lots of AI things for things like noise reduction in audio. It's used on telephones, for instance. So there are also applications, and I see some of these digital audio workstations now incorporating more and more elements of AI into what they're doing and into plugins, which are making them some of the more complicated one, make them more user friendly for people who might not have the same sort of technical expertise as someone who's a full-time engineer, which I think is very useful. There are also things that AI can do that humans are literally incapable of doing. As an audio engineer, an AI can make a fader move faster than I can react to make that fader move if somebody hits a mic too hard, right? And I need to pull something back. Those are interesting things. I think that there's a possibility that it does come to replace technical people some, but I don't think that's a complete replacement. I think you see maybe it took four people to do something that now one person can do. I think that's more likely to see how it affects engineering in the shorter term. As a producer, AI is interesting because it allows me to do things that I might not necessarily have the technical knowledge to do. I'm an audio person. I'm not really a graphic designer, but if I'm doing something that needs a graphic design, I don't necessarily have to farm it out to a graphic designer at this point. I could potentially do something like that myself. Am I going to get a result that's as refined as a graphic designer? Probably not. But if it's something that is workable for that situation, then it may be a good shortcut for me, depending on all sorts of considerations, right? The least of which being budget. As a composer, it's interesting the way that it can generate new ideas. I read music, so there are AI models that will take text and will give you not only a sound output but also a score. So then if I have a melody that I'm using and I want to find variations for it, I could very easily plug it into an AI and let it spit out all these different iterations and then sit there and pick the one that I like best out of what it's created, right? That's maybe good for writer's block, or getting a project started that you may not have a good starting point for. Um, there are also things that the AI does particularly well and things that it does not do particularly well. There's a lot of beat-based music. If you think about hip hop, dance music, electronic music, house music, drum and bass music, all of these types of music they started releasing stems and stem based ways to write this music as a producer, so you don't have to really know how to make the music yourself, but now you can put elements of that music together. I can take a beat from one thing, I can take a synth line from something else, I can take a bass line for something else and put it together. AI does that really well because there is this whole well of the stockpile of material that it can draw from and then compose in that way. So if you're looking for musical beds for something, like you're doing a documentary or you're doing a show on this or that, and you just need some music bed that's not the focus of attention, really easy to get it to do that stuff. But if you want it to write something at like a key moment of a film where you need a string swell that's just going to pull this emotion right out of you, AI is probably not the thing you want. And that kind of brings me to the point of the problem of replacing the taster, right? Like we always need a taster in a way. Um, Anyone can cook a meal, but you really need, there's a chef and there's a taste, and you're paying for that, right? For a top chef, you're paying for their aesthetic judgment and their ability to tell you this is something that's really good, or maybe something you might not appreciate on your own because you don't have that level of expertise. And I think that's going to be something that's tough to replace. I think there was a really good point made earlier about kind of writing, and the most interesting thing about those prompts were the prompts and not the creation. That's where the real creativity came from. And I think that's another thing that you can't really replace with AI. I think you need that writer at the beginning, and you need the taster. You need someone to say, this is good and this is not so good. And I think, and this is going to be appealing to other humans.
Thank you, Alex. That was really great. Speaking of composing, because you touched upon that, we do have some composers here. We have Juan, we have Deborah, we have, of course, Joel. Joel, would you like to, because your career spans so many decades, would you like to talk to us about how, where we are now with AI and what tech you've been using all these years, and if you see something of like it as an evolution rather than a discrete quantum leap right now?
Thank you, Patty. And Alicia, thank you for that stunning and extraordinary introduction and explanation of the whole subject. How beautiful. Yes, many decades encompass the earliest days of electronic music, when you would go to the electronic synth module, at that time brought in by Robert Moog. And you had to deal with very, very complex technical questions like, why isn't my sound working? Why isn't the synthesizer producing a sound? And someone would turn around and say, well, look, idiot, you have to plug the damn thing in. It's a little bit different now. It's much more complex than just plugging the damn thing in. However, having seen the beginning stages of electronic music, moving through the stages of the beginning of synthesis, sound synthesis, computer synthesis of sound in the machine language that was involved in that process, now into AI. The closest my technological side has come to the remnants of the roots of AI is that, being like you, Alicia, a huge fan of Star Trek and of all astronomical cosmological questions of space and time. I want to quote from you, and this is very important, the source. This is a quote from a dream, D-R-E-A-M. The roots of consciousness arise from the evolution of the bicameral mind. And I think about that quote, that like my music came in a dream. And I think that's important, the aspect of dream in this whole thing. One course that I hated in my music courses, like many of those courses, has dealt with imitation or cloning. And then that course was called Styles in which every student learned to compose with the techniques of Mozart or Aaron Copland or other composers, basically imitation or cloning, which taught you absolutely nothing about the fundamental question, which is what are the roots of consciousness within the creative process. When I went on later to become the head of the Department of Music at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, one of the things that I was told by the dean was that you have a section in your department that you didn't know about. So I want to introduce you to that section, and I'll take you up to the laboratory now. And I said, okay, what am I going to do? He said, well, I'm going to take you to the artificial intelligence section, which is spaced in part of the music department. So the engineer in the artificial intelligence section said, well, we're going to play for you a Mozart concerto. The violin is taped. The piano is taped, but the actual recording is done by AI. And not only that, all of the rubato, the phrasing, is shaped by AI. So if the violinist decides to expand the phrase, the AI will adjust to that. If the violinist decides to contract a phrase, the AI will respond to that. The class put on the recording, and I gotta tell you, it was the worst thing I ever heard. It was absolutely no, it was like beta. There was no emotional grounding at all. It was zero, nada. Okay, but I remember one other incident, which I think would be interesting for you. Another person with sleep issues, in which his ideas came to him with tremendous power, besides being most creative people having that issue, was Jonas Salk. Jonas and I were trying to solve the problem at the same time. This was, of course, decades and decades and decades after the creation of the polio vaccine. And I said, Jonas, my question for you is, I had this mandala in a piece that Francois, his wife, and I were working on. And my notation is in mandala. It's the only way I can generate the notation for the song that I'm hearing. And I showed Jonas the mandala, and he said, that's why I love art, because art is the generator in our field of scientific ideas, which his field, of course, our friend from India, was virology. And he said, I'm going to tell you a secret that I have never told anybody, and I don't want you to tell anybody, because if you do, I'll have to deny it. So he told me how he broke the code for the creation of the polio vaccine. I'm not going to divulge it here, but I'm just going to say the importance of dreaming, and something that our friend Chris Fiore said to me only a few weeks ago. He said, I'm looking for the abstraction. Where is the abstraction? And if there's no abstraction, Chris, then what we have is styles, a course in styles. And I think that's something to be aware of. But nevertheless, I do see an exciting future in the generation of song and the compilation of song. Hear me now, the compilation of song from the universe as a temporal palette. So I'm going to end
Thank
my
you, Joel.
introduction.
Thank you so much. I mean, that kind of nicely segues into art that Manoj, the virologist, as you said. Manoj, like I always wonder if there can be art without agony and ecstasy, right? And as a writer, I found that it was in the moments of most angst that I could write most effortlessly, just flowed out of me. So Manoj, I would like to know your views on how you get inspired. I know you're also dabbling into the AI aspect of it. So tell us about your own creative process.
Padmaja, am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible enough? Yes. Yeah. First of all, let me thank you for organizing this wonderful the discussion. And first of all, I'd also like to thank Alicia for giving that wonderful presentation on which summarized the evolution of AI in a very short nutshell, which gave me a lot of ideas. I do mainly watercolors, and I love pencil sketching, and those are the two areas which I love to do most. But I also have been exploring other areas like creating things using Adobe Photoshop for composition of my paintings. I don't do it all the time, but sometimes when I'm really unsure about how my painting should be done, then I first do some exercise using Adobe Photoshop with my Wacom tab. What I found recently is these AI programs which have come into to the forefront, like Midjourney and free the programs which are available, which you can download in a phone and use it. I have experimented my creative process. I mean, especially when I have these starting trouble, sometimes when I'm stuck, I love to paint a lot of things from my fantasies or some imaginary scenes which I create. For example, one which I talked about in the last meeting which we had is a scene of a lion saving a deer on its back from a forest which is blazing in fire, right? So the forest fire is going on in the background, and I imagined a lion instead of, the deer is hurt in the fire. Its limbs are all burned, and the lion is carrying the deer from the forest fire across a log which fell across a stream, and it is walking across that log. And that was a scene which I painted from my imagination long back, even before I started using Photoshop and all. But recently I gave that prompt in one of the AI programs, which I downloaded in my phone. It's a free software. And it gave me so many options. And it was way much better than what I had painted. And now I have so many options to recompose that painting. And it would not be just copying that output from AI. I could add more elements and make it a much better painting. So AI has really revolutionized the process of composition, and I also feel that it not only gives a starting point for people to start a painting, like Alicia mentioned, the no blank canvases anymore. Um, um, I also feel there's a room for AI to work with the artist in the creative process, not only in the starting stage. I'm just wondering if there's a way to create a program. Maybe people have thought about it. Maybe I have painted something, there's to a certain stage, then I'm stuck again. Is there a way I can feed it into some software which would again give me a lot of suggestions and take me out of that, that inertia again? And then I again paint, and then finally I might end up, the painter and the AI work together to create something really, really exceptional. So
That
this
is
is just a thought.
yeah, that is like a beautiful, like something I've also been thinking, how can we make it interactive, right? Rather than just giving a prompt and
Exactly.
letting it spew out. We have some questions from our audience here, and I would love to take them. And maybe Ramesh, as a technologist, you can tell us a little bit about your use of AI and your artist side of yourself, and also answer a few questions in particular. Jamie asks, how do we try to avoid sharing our art online, or how do we hide it, if you have any ideas?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Padmaja, and yeah, thanks again to Alicia, and great discussion. Maybe in my mind, the question is not how to hide from AI, but how to maybe leverage it, like previous panelists have been talking about. But if we do want to kind of be isolated, or perhaps make sure we're getting the credit, either monetary or otherwise, from the works that we as artists are creating. There are a number of options. It's rapidly evolving field for sure. But some of the options that are available now is, if you have your artifacts stored on a website, this is actually a well-established practice even before the recent kind of craze, if you will, where you can block. I mean, as Alicia said, the main kind of fuel for AI is data. So it needs kind of all of your works of art. There are standard mechanisms in the web today to prevent the crawlers from accessing your web content. So you can essentially block your whole website from any crawler or data scraper, if you will. The other option, which is not applicable to all forms of art, but one form of art where there are some tools available, in particular for digital art. So there is some work out of University of Chicago where they essentially embed some kind of noise. So there are a few pixels of your digital art that are changed, but it's not actually visible to the human eye. But what happens when an AI model tries to use your art? So, for example, common use is you have a piece of work and you say, oh, you want to rewrite it, and this is something I try myself, that I want to rewrite my piece of poetry in the style of Robert Frost or Emily Dickinson, as Alicia was talking about. But if you have digital art piece, and you want to prevent an AI from recreating or creating a new piece of art in your style, you can use this tool to embed this kind of little noise in your painting. And what happens is, when AI tries to use it, what comes out is actually complete garbage and noise. So it's kind of very clever way for you to be able to share your art, but prevent AI tools from illegally or otherwise using that. The other one, which I think is perhaps a more, let's call it, practical, and also trying to leverage AI in the right way, a lot of commercial deals are now being struck between the AI tools and publishers. So right now they are kind of with the bigger publishing sites like, New York Times, CNN, Reddit, things like that, where there are, well-established commercial and legal contracts, so that, you provide the right guidance in terms of how your artifacts can be used, but also potentially get compensated for the use of those artifacts.
Thank you, Ramesh. I know you also mentioned that you had some poem that you wrote and then you asked AI to modify it. Was it a significant change from what you had started with?
Yeah, no. So AI is a tool that I've been using a lot. I must admit, I'm kind of an amateur poet, but trying to get better at it. And similar to some of the examples cited by Alicia, as well as Manoj and some of the other folks, I kind of use it for a couple of different purposes. One is kind of the poet's block, or the equivalent to the writer's block that Manoj you talked about. Sometimes you have some idea, but you kind of need some creative spark, and it's very helpful to get going. The other one, and I'd like to maybe share a specific example, is as an educational tool, but also to kind of imagine what maybe a poet or poem that you liked before, and you wanted to see something that you wrote, how would that be kind of the same theme, but how would that be narrated by your favorite poet, right? So one of the things I like to do is write poetry about kind of everyday events, so maybe makes the mundane a little bit more colorful. But I wrote a little piece about a badminton sports group that I am part of. They play quite early in the mornings, so it's a little bit inhumane. It's Saturday at 5:30, so you can imagine it's a pretty enthusiastic group. And they also all speak Tamil, so I'm just giving this little bit of context. I will narrate kind of the starting stanza of the poem. Goes something like this. Birdie takes flight pre-dawn, Tamil chatter spicing up the gym's dawn. Badminton buddies, rackets in hand, ready to soar a raucous band. So that was kind of my little piece that I wrote. And then one of my famous poets is Robert Frost. So I asked our Gemini tool that Alicia mentioned, if Robert Frost had to kind of write on this theme, how would he kind of go about it, and what might he write about this little badminton group? So I gave this little poetry piece as input, and I also trained the language model with Frost's many pieces. And I said, okay, give it a run and see how would Frost write it. So it came up with this for that stanza. It says, before the first cock crows its call, Tamil voices break the empty hall. Old friends in sneakers, grip worn thin, a net between the match to win. So I thought was very interesting. Gave me some new creative ideas, but also it kind of channeled Frost. For those who are familiar with Frost, he likes kind of to focus on New England scenes, kind of rural simplicity, small town details, workaday language. So it was kind of very interesting, inspiring. So I definitely think AI can be kind of a valuable tool in the artist's kind of arsenal.
Thank you, Ramesh. Now, as you said, it could be a powerful tool, and how is this going to come into the educational realm, right? I know, Deborah, you work with kids. You also teach and educator for
Yes.
Juan. So, but we can start with Deborah. What are your thoughts in general about your work in AI and also as an educator?
Well, I haven't used AI at any point in my teaching. I always rely on my own intelligence, human intelligence. But I'm thinking about it in terms of yantras. What is a yantra? A yantra is pretty much a control tool. So I would like to apply the artificial intelligence as a control tool. It's like I prompt it and I put ideas in my prompt, and my results, I want to see results that that I will come up with. That's how I see it. I see it as as a partner. I say, okay, I want to do this, and I put the prompt in, and then it comes up with an idea similar to what I would have. So that's the control factor of it. And that's the way I see it. It's like the human intelligence telling the artificial intelligence what you want it to do for you. And that's why I see it as. I don't know if that anyone else agrees with that. But I'm very interested in in looking at geometric sides, symmetry and geometric things that I see in yantras, and how do I interpret that into sound. There's three things. When you talk about Tesla, he talks about frequency, vibration, and sound. And I would like to apply that to AI technology. I don't know if that sounds so far-fetched, but that's what I'm seeing right now. I don't know if you comprehend what I'm saying. It sounds like out of space, but that's where I'm seeing. That's where my mind is working these days, with artificial intelligence and infusing it with my intelligence to create a positive energy effect with sound.
That sounds great.
That's what I'm thinking. I know it may sound like out of the matrix, but that's how I'm thinking these days about this, and interpreting geometric shapes into sound, and fusing frequency, vibration, and sound together into shapes. So for me, when I see a shape, sacred geometry, I hear sound. So my whole quest was to how do I interpret a circle into a sound, or a square, or all these different geometric sacred geometry shapes, and that's how I'm thinking these days. Okay.
That's some kind of the mandala, Juan, Joel's mandala as well. Now, Juan here is also a songwriter, composer.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Juan?
Juan?
Yeah, I couldn't unmute. Well, my main thing is music. However, nowadays it's hard for people to listen to music without seeing something. It's like they need some kind of eye candy. So I've gotten into video in the last years, and I've been a slave to YouTube to find images that I needed. And there I learned how to, let's say, prompt YouTube to find images, but I can never find exactly what I want. So I'm interested in going into AI and creating my own images for what I want. And I just asked Alicia, and she sent me a link to Veal, it's called, and I'm going to investigate it to see what I can do there. But basically, I think that the creative part, human creative part in AI is prompting. How do you ask the question? How do you specifically ask what you want so that the program understands it? So it is a challenge, but I don't think it's going to be harder than YouTube.
My question always is, like we talk about prompt engineering, prompt everything. You're asking AI to do this. I write, I paint, I do stuff. I create a sculpture because I cannot say it in words. That is why I'm painting. I'm making a sculpture. I cannot write a prompt. It is in my brain. It's abstract. So maybe we'll have a tool one day that takes that abstraction and shows me possibilities, but I'm not so sure. I just want to take a question from our attendee here and throw it at any one of you who can answer. The question is, how can we as artists protect our intellectual property from being used without permission by AI?
I mean, I could start answering that. I think there was another similar question in the Q&A, and you know, what I'm seeing is that we're still in the early days of AI and certainly regulations around AI. There aren't that many at the moment, but that's bound to change. You know, Ramesh mentioned the ability to kind of block websites from using your content. There's also ways in which you can watermark AI-generated content as well. Google has this technique called synth ID, which takes pixels in the image, and another program can read it and know that it was AI-generated. That doesn't solve the problem, of course, of your own content, but you know, it shows that there is work going on to kind of improve on how to protect that IP. You know, we recently in the news saw the actress Scarlett Johansson suing OpenAI because she believes that her voice was used in the voice that they were creating. So I think we're going to see still some more of that before we start to see regulations. It's just early days right now, but I think it will come. There are safeguards that are being put in place for AI as well. I know there's a lot of, I didn't mention it in my talk, so I think I'd mention it here about ethics. Somebody earlier mentioned ethics and biases, you know, because these AIs are trained on data, depending on what data you give it, you know, it might generate results that are biased. But there are, I assure you, techniques in the platforms that are used to develop those models that can help protect against generating content that is, you know, that is biased or has sexual content or violence or many other things. There are ways to control for that today as well to protect the end users. So just wanted to mention that, Padmaja.
Thank you, Alicia. Anyone else want to chip in about the IP? Manoj?
Alicia, it says here that video isn't available in my country.
Okay, so that's an interesting point you make. That is something that I can take back to our product teams, and in fact, it's part of the role that I play at Google Cloud in my role, which is to take feedback from customers and clients. And one that is often on the list is availability in different countries. There is a prioritized list, and those things will start to find their ways into other countries. Not surprisingly, they generally get launched here in the US first, and then we do have the list of countries. Europe is high on the list, so hopefully you won't have to wait long.
Okay.
Manoj has something to say.
Yeah, this is more of a comment, and I would like to get some input on this as well. I've been following, you know, people who post AI images on Facebook, and really wonderful prompts, and which comes up with a lot of very interesting images out there in Facebook. But it's funny that some of those, you know, people who really create very nice images, they also put a note at the bottom that all copyrights reserved or something like that. So is it right to do that? And if it is not right, why is not Facebook stopping that? Or because it's obviously not, I mean, just by giving a prompt, it is not a copyrighted image, in my opinion. What are the other, you know, views on this? I mean, is there any way you can prevent this, or is it right to do that? These are the questions I have.
Anyone, or we chalk this up as another question?
Yeah, I think it's one of those that are yet to be seen, how these get handled. I kind of tend to agree with you, Manoj, that this doesn't sound like they could just put copyright just because the AI generated it and they created the prompt that generated it. It doesn't feel like that should be correct, but I think, again, early days in how this all gets handled, I think.
Perhaps prompts would be copyrighted in the future if it's human generated. Alex?
Yeah, and I think the intellectual property question is an important question, and it really it changes things at least as much as the digital age did in terms of particularly for music with sampling, but the ability to capture something, whether it's audio or an image, that changed things completely with the digital revolution, and they had to rewrite a lot of the laws regarding it. And I think that this is probably even a bigger lift and a larger overhaul that we're going to see. And it's not about just the nature of these things that we produce as intellectual properties as artists, but it's about people's own images and instances globally now of people losing the ability to control their own images in a country on the other side of the world. So I think this is a huge question, and it really is going to take a while to get these things figured out.
Thank you, Alex. There is one other technical question in the QA. I don't know, Ramesh, do you want to take a dig at it? It's about the glaze.
Yeah, I was actually responding on the chat to that question. So yeah, these it's still early days for these tools. I would say it's just more recognition that these are important issues that the industry needs to address. And there are many mechanisms, some technical, some commercial, as I mentioned. So these tools are not perfect, but it's an evolving, and we expect more things to be available. But that's kind of the state of the art today.
Thank you. And we are almost time. Like, I would like to open it up to any other panelists who would like to share a thought. We have like 2 more minutes left. No other thoughts, no other questions. This is, yes, Chris? Muted.
I think there's a huge political aspect to this that we haven't addressed and won't be addressed for a while. But, I think a lot of these questions of copyright and whether or not my work will be used to train another AI, I think if these massive companies that are making trillions of dollars off of treating the vast expanse of human knowledge like an open pit strip mine to generate wealth for a very small number of people, had some kind of were forced to engage in some kind of social contract where it was more of a give and take, I think a lot of these issues and problems would not necessarily be solved, but would not be as fierce. And I think that's something that we're going to start to see in the future. At least I hope that happens. But that's
Totally.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, it's one of those times in history when we really don't have a clear picture of what's going to happen. And it's thrilling to be like, we are here now and we are going to see history happen, but it's also terrifying to think what's going to happen. Thank you, everybody. This has been a very illuminating, enlightening experience. I thank every one of you, all the participants. Hope we answered all the questions.
Thank you, Padmaja.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing us together.
Very much.
Thank you very much, Alicia, for your presentation. It was wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.